Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing abrupt climate change for the most part. Seems to be the largest problem on our plate, even though others may differ. I just had somebody jump on the channel and say, talk about man-made climate change is not real and it's the sun, blah, blah, blah. All right, guy. Oh, and sea level rise. He said sea level rise isn't real. Okay, so explain. I think he said it in response to my last video where I said, bring me the evidence, explain. You don't just come on here and go, no, that's not right. Bring me the evidence, dude. If if you want to come back and comment on this channel, you probably won't. Tell me, show me how this is made up. Show me how somebody is making up the tides coming into Miami and Hawaii and wiping out the Marshall Islands and other locales. Towns in Alaska are being wiped off the map because of sea level rise. There's no way to just, to fake this or to, fudge the numbers or whatever it is that, climate change deniers are trying to say is happening. Bring me the evidence. Don't talk. Don't open your mouth. Don't type words unless you got evidence. That is what this channel is about. We're mainly talking about climate change, but I also like to talk about political stuff too. And, because politics is part of the reason why we are here. Politics, sociology, psychology, there are many factors into why we cannot accept or deal with our own demise. So, when we're talking about politics, or when people want to talk about politics, remember that it's evidence-based. One article from some news outlet or one YouTube video does not explain away a whole series of events. And it's very interesting on the political side, how how there's basically two different realities happening. If you're on the left or if you're on the right, there are two entirely different realities going on. And somewhere in there is the truth. You could actually argue that both sides are in such a death grip over information that they are, willing to say and do anything to prove their point, willing to say and do anything to get their way, willing to do and say anything to gain and keep their power. And that is absolutely true. And it's very easy to get sucked into, whatever confirmation bias on either side of the political spectrum, because people are trying to prove a point, or people trying to, they're trying to be right. They're trying to be like, look, see, I told you. And that often is more important than actually finding out what the truth is. I'm going to be all over the place in this video today, and I apologize in advance, but I wanted to really quickly say, obviously, everybody's heard the news about North and South Korea. The reason why I have brought up the QAnon thing in the past is because this is a huge news story and people aren't covering it. The mainstream media will not cover it, and the left will only slander and, put the conspiracy alt-right label on it in order to keep people from looking at it or thinking about it. And this is one of the ways in which the absolute rabid mad dog, need to skew the truth or skew what's going on, or keep people from looking at something in order to, keep your story going. This is one of the ways in which that is playing out in the media. the reason why I'm talking about QAnon, I am not alt-right. I'm not a, I'm not a big old Trumpy fan in any way, shape, or form. But this is news. This is actually happening. There's something that's going on, and it's pretty remarkable what's happening. So like, I think to not look at this or to not pay attention to it. And you also have to wonder, the harder the mainstream media tries to squash something or put the conspiracy label on it, or to, push it under the rug, the harder they do that, the more you have to wonder why. Why are they doing that? Why am I talking about this? Because this actually ties into climate change in a lot of ways. It ties into the fact that, climate denialism, and even the line between people who know about climate change but don't accept the idea of abrupt climate change. This is how information gets, parsed and skewed and twisted in certain ways in order to keep people from knowing what's going on. And that's the most difficult thing that climate change has, going against really realizing what's happening. The most difficult thing that we have in fighting climate change, or alerting people to how bad climate change is that, you have people on the left and the right. You have people on both sides of the spectrum trying to say, like, don't look over there. Don't check that out, because it gets in the way of business as usual. And business as usual is, in the hierarchy of things for human beings right now, business as usual is way more important than saving our lives. And that, if that's not insanity, I don't know what it is. But very quickly, to jump back to the QAnon thing, you've heard about the North and South Korea thing, the denuclearization thing. And it's kind of amazing how insane the mainstream media is, how rabidly they are against Trump, that they're not even acknowledging that this is actually, according to QAnon and according to people in their camp, this is something that they actually brought about, or they, with the help of China and like whatever. It was a coordinated effort to go even deeper into this QAnon story. So this is a wild thing about the QAnon story, is that somebody in the Trump campaign, somebody with a high-level security clearance, is talking about what's going on behind the scenes, talking about actual conspiracy stuff that, stuff that's been labeled conspiracy is stuff that, like, somebody with a Q-level security clearance in a intelligence agency capacity is talking about things that are actually conspiracies that are actually happening, and how they are basically thwarting it, getting rid of it. One of the conspiracy theories is that North Korea was actually a CIA-held state. That CIA controlled the state. Also, they're saying the same thing with Iran, etc. Basically, deep state intelligence agencies are like controlling these countries in order to create like all this like news and mayhem and division, and in order to ramp up some, what the end goal of this is, I still don't know. What the end result of this is, I still don't know. But it's very, very interesting stuff. Again, I'm just speaking about this because I'm interested in it, because it is a thing that is actually happening. And, a lot of people who report on this on YouTube and in other places have their channels shut down. They're trying to, they've tried to shut down the boards where the QAnon thing is happening. And you have to wonder, if they're trying to shut it down, if it's a joke or a fake, or, why are they trying so hard to shut down the information? And this goes along also with the whole thing about the Russian bots, the Russian meddling. you know, what they're trying to do is trying to make it seem like people don't actually feel this way, or people aren't actually thinking this way, or if they do think this way, it's they're being controlled. You know, you are being controlled by people who are trying to tell you that people can't, you know, think something different than what the mainstream media is telling them. It's just a huge, it's a huge like Gordian knot of politics and information and misinformation and propaganda, and like, you know, there's so much stuff going on that it's kind of insane. But you know, I'm covering this because it's interesting, and I'm covering it because I hope that somebody out there who's watching this channel actually might be able to do some, you know, investigation for themselves. Because if you actually look at this stuff and see what's going on, they are talking about stuff that's going on, you know, stuff that happens prior to actually happening. And they were talking about the North and South Korea thing prior to it actually happening, and then it came out. So how would they have knowledge of this if it's a joke? How would this person, if this person wasn't really, you know, talking about something that was actually happening, how would they know this was going to happen? So there's other things that seem to be in the works that they are talking about, soon to be revealed. There's something about the text, release the text. If anybody's watching those hashtags, check that out. Very interesting stuff. You know, the 5,000 missing texts between Strzok and is it Page, were just released to Congress, and they contain some incredibly damaging stuff. And so I believe that in the next few weeks there's going to be some really kind of crazy stuff happening politically. And so keep your eyes open for that. I'm just letting you know. I'm just giving you information. I'm not telling you, you know, believe or don't believe, but please, open minds. Anyways, on to abrupt climate change stuff. This is a comment from MeGain921. Did I read this already? I, you know, it's like I do these videos and I have so little time and so many things in my brain that I cannot remember whether I did something or not. But I'm going to read this. If I already read it, I'm going to read it again because it was a good comment from MeGain921. Thank you, Kevin, for giving us a place to stop by and link with some of the very few who not only understand but also have the strength to accept that we are now caught up in a chain of actions that we have absolutely no control over, and is without doubt a spiral down into extinction. Like you, I live in two worlds. I feel lonely with my knowledge. It has been said that if you are the only sane person in a large group of the insane, then you will be seen as the insane one. 2 days ago, I introduced a friend to ACC and biosphere destruction. He is an intelligent person who has a successful resort that caters for people who go on spiritual and motivational retreats. That's lovely. He was concerned and understood as I laid out the key points. His comment was, I don't want to know this. A month ago, I did the same thing with my personal physician. He understood and said, I prefer to be more optimistic. He has 3 young children, so I guess that when I'm not here, I shall continue to be seen as the insane one, a title I am happy with. I gave up on our species long ago. My professional and life experience long ago confirmed that it is true that our species, Homo stultus, may claim to be intelligent, but it lacks the ability to overcome its inherent stupidity, and so is unable to use that intelligence, which is the cause of its own demise. For intelligence without wisdom is a force of destruction. Indeed. I rather like that comment. Somebody else commented today that they were feeling like people were extra angry. I don't know. Is anybody else having those experiences? Because I actually am. People are like super angry, super pushy, super selfish, super like, get out of my way. And it seems to be, I feel like we're reaching a tipping point in society, right? Like there's just, the way society is, or the way society runs, the way that we conduct ourselves, our daily lives, is the cracks are getting bigger. The cracks in the wall are getting bigger. The knowledge of what's really going on behind the scenes politically is becoming too apparent. The knowledge of what's going on environmentally is becoming too apparent for people to ignore. Because if you actually pay attention to this, you start to realize that the way that we're living, the things that we are doing, aren't sustainable and aren't okay, and aren't, if we're going to address these problems, we actually have to change our entire way of thinking and being and living. I think that's causing people a lot of distress. I once brought up, the severity of abrupt climate change to somebody that I was very, very close to. And they were like, their reaction was, I think I've said this before, was just like, no, I have things I want to do. No, I'm going to do, I'm just going to do the things that I was supposed to do, before you gave me this news. And that was their reaction. And so I think on some level, like, that's people's reaction. Like they know the truth, they know what's going down, and they're like, their reaction to it is like, no, no, we're making this happen, and we're going to make it happen no matter what. Like, don't you dare mess up my good time with some truth. Like, and we're going to see this continue to increase. I think this is, at least what the near future holds, until everybody, comes to a realization, until, society as a whole goes, oh, yeah, whoops, this is, we can't do that anymore. So now what are we going to do? Until that moment comes, we're going to see people holding on for dear life to what they think is how it is that we, how we're supposed to be living, how the future is supposed to go, no matter what the truth says. People are going to hold on to that hallucination for as long as they can. And it's not going to be very fun to watch that. It's not going to be very pretty. I think we're in the beginning stages of watching that happening. And yeah, as the culture zombies continue to get weirder, we're going to read about the possibility of people becoming actual zombies. This is from bustle.com. What is zombie deer disease? The CDC is warning that humans could catch this disease that's turning deers into zombies. So that's fun. I know it sounds like the premise of a low-budget horror film, but unfortunately, this is a description of a real-life threat in the news today. Apparently, species of deer around the country are contracting some sort of condition called zombie deer disease by various media outlets, which causes them to behave sort of like zombies. And now the Center for Disease Control and Prevention is warning that humans could technically be susceptible to the disease too. So it's worth asking, what is zombie deer disease? If you've seen Bambi, you probably love deer as much as I do. And this news is probably super disconcerting. What business do deer and zombies have even sharing a news headline? According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, as of January 2018, at least 22 states and 2 Canadian provinces have confirmed reports of chronic wasting disease, which is being colloquially referred to as the zombie deer disease. The illness is classified as a prion disease, meaning it falls under a rare family of progressive neurodegenerative disorders, aka a disorder that causes damage or death to the brain that affects both humans and animals. In the case of, think mad cow disease. In the case of zombie deer disease, white-tailed deer, black-tailed deer, silka deer, elk, mule deer, and moose are being affected so far, but the CDC isn't ruling out the possibility of it spreading to humans because other prion diseases have affected humans before. Prion diseases are characterized by long incubation periods, changes associated with neuronal loss, and a defunct inflammatory response. Prions are contagious, abnormal proteins that cause other proteins in the brain to become abnormal as well. Quite literally, it reduces the brain structure to that of a sponge. Once the disease is active, which typically takes a year from the contamination period, the victim exhibits behaviors not dissimilar to that exhibited by zombies in horror movies: severe weight loss, strange posture, a lack of energy, unsteady balance, a loss of coordination, extreme thirst, excessive urination, drooling, low-hanging ears, and aggressive behavior. Even worse, these obvious symptoms only become apparent during the terminal stage of the disease. In the year prior to the symptoms emerging, these animals can shed infectious protein prions, contaminating any other deer that come into contact directly with their saliva, blood, feces, urine, or indirectly within an infected environment. As humans, the latter is a condition that we have to worry about because while the CDC has not yet found any evidence to suggest that zombie deer disease can spread to humans, the infected prions are able to adapt easily, and in the past there have been cases of other strands of infected prions that have successfully transferred between different species. For instance, in the early 2000s, mad cow disease came to the US, but many scientists believe that it was originally introduced to the larger ecosystem by sheep infected with scrappy, a transmissible spongiform encephalopathies, which was transferred to cattle through feed that had infected sheep carcass, which then transferred the disease to people through infected beef. So if the history of similar diseases were to be considered a rule of thumb, it would be wise to abstain from consuming deer meat. For hunters and harvesters of deer, the Canadian government has released a warning against consumption and also includes imperative safety procedures to follow regarding the disposal and removal of deer carcasses. Though surely this disease is shocking, gruesome, and upsetting to read about, there are a variety of species that fall victim to zombie-like diseases, so it's not that crazy in the animal kingdom. On a smaller scale, many different species of bugs are susceptible to parasites that literally take over their body, use it to their advantage, and then ultimately cause death to their host. For instance, Ophiocordyceps unilaterus is a fungus that preys on certain types of ants. Once the ant is infected with the spore, the fungus will gradually take over the ant until all that's left is exoskeleton filled with maturing spores. Isn't that lovely? AKA, if you see a dead ant that has a mushroom growing out of it, it fell victim to this disease. Pill bugs, cockroaches, spiders, and crabs are also common victims of zombie diseases. But before you cut ties with your affection for Bambi or start squashing bugs, remember that the CDC does not currently find these diseases active threats to humans. If you want to take precautions, skip the venison medallions at dinner and go for something plant-based. Help to secure the health of the planet and avoid becoming a character in a horror film that's actually your real life. Look out, guys. Zombies might actually be real after all. I'm already getting deep into this video, so I'm going to not read entire articles. I'm going to just kind of hit a few more articles, but everything is going to be linked below so that you can read this for yourself. The cow could soon be the largest land mammal left due to human activity. This is from The Guardian. The cow could be left as the biggest land mammal on Earth in a few centuries, according to a new study that examines the extinction of large mammals as humans spread around the world. The spread of hominins, early humans and related species such as Neanderthals from Africa, thousands of years ago coincided with the extinction of megafauna such as the mammoth, the saber-toothed tiger, and the glyptodon, an armadillo-like creature the size of a car. There is a very clear pattern of size-biased extinction that follows the migration of hominins out of Africa. The study's lead author, Felisa Smith of the University of New Mexico, said of the study published in the journal Science on Thursday. Excuse me. Humans apparently targeted the big species for meat, while smaller creatures such as rodents escaped, according to this report, which examines trends over 125,000 years. In North America, for instance, the mean body mass of land-based mammals has shrunk to 7.6 kilograms from 98 kilograms after humans arrived. That's a lot of shrinkage. If the trend continues, the largest mammal on Earth in a few hundred years may well be the domestic cow at about 900 kilograms, the research wrote. A red list of threatened species maintained by the Union for Conservation of Nature also lists some wild mammals roughly the size of a cow, such as African buffalo or the brown bear, as unendangered. But what are endangered? Elephants, giraffes, hippos. And the world's last male northern white rhino died in Kenya just recently. The science study also excludes marine animals such as the blue whale, the largest creature that has ever existed. It is listed as endangered on the red list, but the populations are rising after a moratorium on hunting. That's good news. Okay, moving on to this last article, which is actually quite old, 2011. I guess that's not quite old, but pretty old. 7 years is pretty old these days. 7 days is old. This is from Truth Out. The military assault on global climate. This is probably going to be very long, but I'm just going to kind of skip around here. By every measure, the Pentagon is the largest institutional user of petroleum products and energy. Yet the Pentagon has a blanket exemption in all international climate agreements. Any talk of climate change which does not include the military is nothing but hot air. According to Sarah Flounders, it's a loophole big enough to drive a tank through. It's in the Kyoto Convention on Climate Change. According to the report, Climate of War, in 1940, the U.S. military consumed 1% of the country's total energy use. By the end of World War II, the military share rose to 29%. Oil is indispensable for war. Correspondingly, militarism is the most oil-exhaustive activity on the planet, growing more so with faster, bigger, more fuel-guzzling planes, tanks, and naval vessels employed in more intensive air and ground wars. Yeah, in order to keep all the war machines going, you got to go to war to make sure that you have the oil to keep the war machines going. See how that works? Among the Army's armamentarium were 2,000 staunch M1 Abrams tanks fired up for war and burning 250 gallons of fuel per hour. Holy. The U.S. Air Force is the single largest consumer of jet fuel in the world. Fathom, if you can, the astronomical fuel usage of USAF fighter planes. The F-4 Phantom fighter burns more than 1,600 gallons of jet fuel per hour and peaks at 14,400 gallons per hour at supersonic speeds. 14,000 gallons per hour. That's amazing. The B-52 Stratocruiser with 8 jet engines guzzles 55 gallons per minute. 10 minutes of flight uses as much fuel as the average driver does in 1 year of driving. A quarter of the world's jet fuel feeds the USAF fleet of flying killing machines. In 2006, they consumed as much fuel as U.S. planes did during the Second World War. That was 4 years, an astounding 2.6 billion gallons in 1 year. So this is the same, the military, which is doing studies on climate change. I wonder when they're gonna go like, oh, hey, it's us. The projected costs, full costs of the Iraq war, $3 trillion would cover all the global investments in renewable power generation needed between now and 2030 to reverse global warming trends. Between 2003 and 2007, the war generated at least 141 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, more each year of the war than 139 of the world's countries release annually. Rebuilding Iraqi schools, homes, businesses, bridges, roads, and hospitals pulverized by the war and new security walls and barriers will require millions of tons of cement, one of the largest industrial sources of greenhouse gas emissions. In 2006, the U.S. spent more on the war in Iraq than the entire world spent on renewable energy investment. By 2008, the Bush administration had spent 97 times more on military than on climate change. Of course they did. As a presidential candidate, President Obama pledged to spend $150 billion over 10 years on green energy, technology, and infrastructure, less than the United States was spending in 1 year on the Iraq war. you get the picture. I'm going to link this below, and that's all I'm going to read from that. But so, let's hope the thing that's happening in North and South Korea can be something that we can, let's think about the possibility of that between other countries, right? Like, some kind of peace, some kind of détente, some kind of, agreements to denuclearize. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be the Trump administration or another administration, or, I don't know what or how that could happen or what that would look like. But, that thing that's happening in the Korean Peninsula is, absolutely a good thing. If things like that can be fostered, everywhere, that would be awesome. If we could stop our imperialism, just our knee-jerk need to be imperialistic, and start to foster some kind of cooperation between countries. Like, look, there are more important things to be working on, right? Obviously, Trump is not the person that's going to lead us into like fighting climate change. That's not going to happen. But like, the first step to getting us all on the same page would be like, hey, this whole like war stuff that we're doing, and this whole like, fighting over oil fields, and this chasing down the last drops of oil, like maybe this isn't the way to go, guys. Maybe there could be some sane people that get in there, and we can start negotiating on something that looks like a future for the planet. Yes, I know, highly unlikely. I totally get it. I totally accept that as a completely unlikely scenario. But hey, why not think about it? The only way that we can actually get there is if we see the road. If we see the road and make a map to what the future might look like. That's the only way. You got to think about it. You got to consider it. You got to, entertain the possibility. You can't just be like, no, we're all fucked. That's it. That's, sure, that's the likelihood that we are is, pretty much guaranteed. But, there's nothing wrong with imagining, something in the way of a future, of a possible future, of a possible path forward. There's nothing wrong or destructive or damaging in that way. You have to know what the truth is first before you take that path. That's all. That's all I have to say for today. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.